Imagine waking up every morning with peace of mind, not because you won the lottery, but because you earned your freedom. True wealth isn't about what's in your wallet, it's about what's in your mind. Today, we'll uncover the timeless philosophy of financial freedom, taught by one of the greatest mentors of success, Jim Rohn. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll hear today could shift your life's direction, from working for money to having money work for you. Let's begin. Jim Rohn once said, "If you want to have more, you must become more." Wealth doesn't start with opportunity, it starts with thinking. It's not about the size of your paycheck, but the size of your philosophy. Think of a farmer who plants seeds. The soil doesn't care who you are. It only responds to what you plant. Your mind works the same way. If you plant seeds of abundance, discipline, and learning, the harvest will come. But if you sow excuses and doubt, poverty grows. The foundation of wealth begins in thought. 1. The difference between rich thinking and poor thinking. Once, two brothers inherited the same amount of money. The first said, "I'll spend it before it disappears." The second said, "I'll invest it before it disappears." 10 years later, one was broke, the other financially free. The only difference? Philosophy. For most people, wealth begins and ends in the wallet, but for the wise, it begins and ends in the mind. What separates the prosperous from the struggling is not luck, lineage, or location. It is the way they think about value, time, and opportunity. Poor thinking consumes what it receives. Rich thinking multiplies what it is given. Poor thinking says, "I worked hard, I deserve to relax." Rich thinking says, "I worked hard, now let that effort grow while I rest." In every decision, one mindset seeks comfort, the other seeks growth. Poor thinking is immediate, emotional, and reactive. It looks at money as a means to pleasure or escape, a temporary relief from dissatisfaction. The poor thinker views wealth as something that happens to other people, or as a force of luck, exploitation, or destiny. They say, "If only I earned more, I'd be free." But freedom never begins with the paycheck. It begins with perception. The rich thinker sees money as a tool, a servant of purpose. They ask, "How can I use this to build, to learn, to expand?" Their joy is not in spending, but in growing, not in showing wealth, but in compounding it quietly. The poor thinker wants quick results. The rich thinker wants lasting foundations. Jim Rohn said that your income rarely exceeds your level of personal development. That means money doesn't grow faster than you do. If your philosophy remains poor, fearful, short-sighted, and reactive, then even great sums will shrink in your hands. But if your thinking expands, if you study, observe, and improve, then even small resources will multiply under your care. The mind is the true investment account. Every idea you plant, every discipline you nurture, every habit you master becomes compounded interest on your future. The poor thinker says, "I can't afford it." The rich thinker asks, "How can I afford it?" That single difference, from closing the door to opening a possibility, determines destiny. Rich thinking is not about greed, it is about stewardship. It is the belief that every resource, money, time, talent, energy, can be transformed through intention. It is about learning to delay gratification, to endure short-term sacrifices for long-term freedom. It is about realizing that wealth is not a pile of coins, but a pattern of choices. The poor thinker wants wealth without wisdom. The rich thinker knows wisdom creates wealth. When you begin to think richly, to see abundance in learning, gratitude, and growth, then your external circumstances slowly begin to match your internal wealth. The path from scarcity to prosperity begins not with a new job, but with a new philosophy. 2. Building a philosophy of personal responsibility. Jim Rohn often said, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better." Within that simple sentence lies an entire philosophy of power. Most people wish the world would change to suit them, that life would become gentler, that bosses would become fairer, that luck would suddenly favor them. But life does not bend to wishes. It responds to responsibility. There's a story about a young man who blamed everyone for his financial troubles. His boss for underpaying him, his parents for not teaching him, his government for overtaxing him. Rohn listened patiently, then handed him a mirror and said, "There's the man responsible." That moment shattered his excuses and built his foundation. Because the moment you see yourself as the source, you also see yourself as the solution. Personal responsibility is not about guilt, it is about power. When you blame others, you surrender control. When you accept responsibility, you reclaim it. Most people live as victims of circumstance because they misunderstand responsibility as punishment. But responsibility is the ultimate privilege. It means your choices matter. It means that even if life gives you a raw deal, you still decide how to respond. You cannot control the economy, but you can control your education. You cannot command opportunity, but you can prepare for it. The more responsibility you accept, the freer you become, because freedom is not the absence of problems, it is the ability to act upon them. Rohn taught that life does not respond to need, it responds to deserve. And deserve is built through daily responsibility, by doing what others avoid, by improving when others complain. The person who takes responsibility builds discipline, and discipline compounds into results. Every time you say, "It's up to me," you grow stronger. Every time you say, "It's their fault," you shrink. Responsibility is not glamorous, but it is transformative. It turns the powerless into leaders, the passive into creators, the dependent into self-reliant beings. You do not have to control everything, but you must control yourself, your thoughts, your habits, your reactions. Those are the levers by which destiny moves. Ultimately, responsibility is the bridge between frustration and freedom. When you stand on the side of blame, you feel trapped by forces beyond you. When you cross that bridge, you realize that the same mind that created your problems can create your solutions. The greatest moment in a person's life is when they stop pointing fingers and start lifting mirrors. Because in that reflection, they find not fault, but potential. The man who accepts responsibility for his life has already begun to master it. The world may remain uncertain, but his direction becomes clear. Responsibility is not the weight of life. It is the wings by which we rise above it. 3. How attitude shapes your financial altitude. A young salesman once told Jim, "I just can't sell." Rohn smiled and replied, "Then you'll never be rich, not because of skill, but because of attitude." That single insight captures a truth most overlook. Your outer life rises only as high as your inner posture. Attitude is the lens through which you interpret every experience. It colors your perception of opportunity, failure, and effort. Two people can face the same setback. One grows bitter, the other grows better. The difference is attitude. The man who says, "I can't," closes every door. The one who says, "I'll find a way," creates doors where none existed. That salesman decided to change. He began each day saying, "I'm the best salesman in the world." At first it felt foolish, even dishonest, but repetition rewires belief, and belief rewires behavior. Within a year, he had transformed from hesitant to confident, from doubtful to decisive. His results followed his renewed attitude. Rohn would say, "You can't change the wind, but you can set the sail." Attitude is the setting of the sail. You can't control the market, the weather, or the opinions of others, but you can control the direction of your own thinking. And once your mind aims upward, your life begins to follow. A positive attitude is not blind optimism. It is disciplined perception. It doesn't deny problems. It confronts them with courage. When you choose the right attitude, you become bigger than your circumstances. People with great attitudes attract opportunity because energy recognizes energy. No one wants to follow a complainer. Everyone gravitates toward the person who radiates faith and possibility. Your attitude is your advertisement. It tells the world whether to invest in you, trust you, or avoid you. If you approach life with enthusiasm, diligence, and gratitude, you multiply your chances of success, not by magic, but by magnetism. Ultimately, your attitude determines your financial altitude because it governs your resilience, your learning, and your effort. When times are good, attitude keeps you humble. When times are hard, attitude keeps you hopeful. It is the anchor and the engine. Change your attitude, and you change your relationship to work, to money, to life itself. Every fortune begins in the mind of someone who refused to quit. So if you want to rise higher, stop waiting for conditions to improve. Start by improving your condition of mind. As Rohn said, for things to change, you have to change. And change begins not with knowledge or capital, but with attitude, the invisible currency that buys every visible success. 4. Small disciplines that build big fortunes. Success is rarely about one big decision. It's about small disciplines practiced daily. We often imagine that greatness, wealth, or transformation comes from one dramatic breakthrough, a stroke of genius, or an overnight success story. But that's an illusion. The truth, as Jim Rohn used to say, is that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Likewise, failure is just a few errors in judgment, repeated over time. The problem is that both are deceptively small, so small that they're easy to do and just as easy not to do. Jim told a story about two men who each drank a glass of water every morning. One added a spoonful of sugar, the other didn't. For a week, there was no difference. For a month, still nothing noticeable. But after a few years, one man was strong, energetic, and healthy. The other was overweight, lethargic, and struggling with health problems. The difference wasn't in one dramatic choice, but in a tiny decision repeated consistently. The same applies to every area of life. Our habits are the architects of our destiny. The small things we do, or fail to do, every day eventually add up to massive consequences. Think about money. If you save just $5 a day, that's $150 a month, over $1,800 a year. Invested wisely, that modest sum compounds into a small fortune over decades. Yet most people ignore such small amounts because they seem insignificant in the moment. They say, it's just a cup of coffee, not realizing that it's also the habit of indiscipline, the silent erosion of potential wealth. On the other hand, the person who makes the small, boring decision to save, read, learn, and improve daily is building invisible momentum. Like the man who skips the sugar, he doesn't notice much change in the short term, but over time, he becomes a completely different person, wealthier, wiser, and more capable. Discipline in this sense is the seed. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, and it doesn't bring instant results. But it's the beginning of every harvest worth having. The great trap of life is that neglect also compounds, just in the opposite direction. Skip your reading today, spend impulsively tomorrow, ignore your goals the next day, and before long you've built a life of quiet regret. Every neglected act is a debt you'll eventually have to pay. Every disciplined act is an investment that will one day reward you. Jim Rohn once said, "We must all suffer one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is that discipline weighs ounces, while regret weighs tons. The man who saves a little each day feels the pinch at first, the discomfort of restraint, but later he enjoys the freedom that discipline buys. The one who avoids discipline feels pleasure now, but pays the price later. Both paths demand effort, but only one leads to prosperity. If you want to build wealth, don't chase big leaps. Practice small disciplines. Read 10 pages of a good book every day. Spend less than you earn. Exercise your mind and your character. Review your goals each morning. Every little act becomes a brick in the foundation of fortune. As Jim often reminded his audience, success is predictable. The laws of cause and effect never fail. The small disciplines you plant today will inevitably bear fruit tomorrow. So start small, but start now. Build habits that serve your future self. Let your actions compound quietly in the background. One day, others will look at your results and call you lucky. But you'll know it wasn't luck. It was discipline. It was patience. It was the power of the small things done well. Discipline is the seed. Wealth is the harvest. Plant daily. 5. The compounding power of consistency. A man once asked Jim, "What's the secret to success?" Jim smiled and said, "Consistency. Not intensity, not talent, not luck, but consistency. Anyone can do the right thing once. Anyone can feel motivated for a week or a month. But the real magic happens when you stay faithful to your habits long after the excitement fades. That's where success hides, in the quiet repetition of what works." Think of the Chinese bamboo tree. For the first year, you water it, nurture it, and see nothing. The second year, still nothing. Third, fourth, fifth, not even a hint of growth above the ground. To the untrained eye, it looks like failure. People might even laugh and say you're wasting your time. But what they don't see is what's happening beneath the soil. The bamboo is growing roots deep and wide, preparing to sustain its future growth. Then, suddenly, in the 5th year, it shoots up 80 feet in just 6 weeks. Did it really grow in 6 weeks? No, it grew underground for 5 years. That's the power of consistency. The same principle governs everything worth achieving: wealth, health, relationships, mastery. At first, results are invisible. You work, you save, you study, and nothing seems to happen. That's when most people quit. They can't see the compound effect building beneath the surface. But those who stay consistent eventually experience what others call overnight success. Only it's not overnight. It's the visible tip of years of invisible work. Jim Rohn used to say, "Success is neither magical nor mysterious. Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying basic fundamentals." Every successful person is just someone who kept doing simple things long enough for them to matter. They read when others watched television. They saved when others spent. They worked on themselves when others waited for motivation. Over time, the compound effect, that silent multiplier, transformed small efforts into huge rewards. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. You'll have off days, setbacks, distractions. The key is to return to your habits quickly, to stay in the game. Missing one workout won't ruin your health, but quitting the habit will. Skipping one day of reading won't make you ignorant, but abandoning learning will. The great ones understand that consistency isn't about doing everything right. It's about never giving up the rhythm of doing something right often enough. Consider your finances. Saving $100 once doesn't change your life, but saving it every month for 10 years and letting it grow certainly does. Relationships are the same. One kind word or one act of appreciation doesn't create deep trust, but daily care, patience, and presence do. The invisible deposits we make through consistent action create lasting dividends in every area of life. The tragedy is that most people underestimate the slow beginnings. They want visible proof now, not realizing that compound growth is exponential, not linear. In the early stages, progress feels painfully slow. Later, it feels unstoppable. The only bridge between those two stages is consistency. It's showing up when no one's watching. It's doing the work when the applause hasn't arrived. It's watering your bamboo when the soil still looks barren. Keep doing the right things, saving, learning, serving, improving, and trust the process. Time will do the heavy lifting. One day, your results will tower like the bamboo tree, and people will call you lucky or gifted. But you'll know it wasn't luck. It was consistency, the quiet, patient persistence of a disciplined mind and faithful habits. Wealth, character, and freedom grow quietly, then suddenly. So keep watering. Your harvest is already on its way. Jim Rohn said it best. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because when you grow, your income, influence, and impact grow with you. Financial freedom isn't about luck. It's about philosophy. It's about mastering your thoughts, your attitude, and your daily disciplines. So don't chase wealth. Attract it by becoming the kind of person wealth is drawn to. The real question isn't, what am I getting, but who am I becoming? Start there, and financial freedom will follow.